I want you to imagine October 19th, 1943.
Okay.
It's 10:01 p.m., and we are at the Gander military base in Newfoundland.
A massively important place during the war.
Exactly. And the atmosphere there tonight is, it's just heavy in every sense of the word.
Right.
The fog rolling in off the Atlantic Ocean is so thick, so dense, that it's practically swallowing the hangars whole.
Yeah, you can barely see your own hand in front of your face in weather like that.
And the cold air is completely saturated, just the stinging chemical smell of aviation kerosene everywhere.
That smell gets right into your clothes, into your hair.
Oh, absolutely. And sitting out there on the wet tarmac is this absolute behemoth of an aircraft, the Liberator Harry.
Tail number 3701H.
That's the one. Up in the cockpit, you've got pilot Jerry Nash, and he's running through his final pre-flight checks.
Surrounded by that deafening, bone-rattling roar of the engines.
4 Wright R1820 Cyclone engines, these massive 9-cylinder radial engines.
When 4 of those are firing at once, the vibration literally travels right up to the soles of your boots.
You feel it in your teeth. And if you look at the official paperwork for this specific flight, the scene is, well, it's entirely straightforward.
Right, on paper, it's just a routine military transport.
Exactly. You have Pilot Nash, 3 other crew members, and 20 military passengers heading out on leave.
24 men in total.
The radio operator logs exactly 24 souls on board. But if you peer through the dim yellow light of the hangar, shielded by the roar of those cyclone engines,
there is a secondary scene unfolding right alongside the official one.
Yeah.
And this secondary scene is the one that officially never happened. It's the one that was actively erased.
Because slipping quietly through the rear door of the bomber is a civilian man.
A civilian on a military transport.
And he's clutching a brown leather briefcase stamped with the letters CNR, the National Research Council.
He's holding it against his chest like his life depends on it.
And right beside him is a woman in a dark coat. Before they board, she reaches out and touches the leather of that briefcase.
Almost in this protective, maternal way.
Exactly. Meanwhile, down on the tarmac, there's a military liaison officer. His entire job is to verify who gets on that plane.
Right. He signs the manifest.
But he is deliberately looking away. He won't even glance at the civilian man or the woman.
He's actively avoiding eye contact.
And if you look closely, his hands are trembling so badly he can barely hold his pen.
Wow.
Inside the plane, a tail gunner named Sergeant Maurice Bergeron notices the woman sitting in the shadows.
He sees her?
He opens his mouth to ask a question, but the flight navigator shoots him a look. You know, a look that is universally understood in any military.
Keep your mouth shut.
Keep your mouth shut.
What's fascinating here is the manufactured blindness.
Yeah.
You have this highly regulated military machine actively choosing not to see what is happening right in front of its own eyes.
Right.
The system is functioning perfectly, but it's functioning to create a void.
So the plane taxis down the wet runway, lifts off into the Newfoundland night, and just vanishes into the low-hanging clouds.
Into the fog.
A few hours later, at 1:45 a.m. on October 20th, Pilot Nash radios the control tower at Montreal, Quebec.
He's asking for permission to land.
But the tower denies the request. There's heavy fog, blinding snow. The visibility is basically zero.
They order him to divert, right?
Yeah, to Dorval or Rockcliffe instead. Nash keys his radio, acknowledges the order, and then
Nothing.
total immediate silence. The Liberator Harry never responds again.
It's just gone.
Welcome to our deep dive. Today we are unpacking a massive stack of sources,
Declassified logs, historical accounts, personal letters.
detailing one of the most meticulously executed institutional cover-ups of the Second World War,
A cover-up that sat perfectly undisturbed for 3 years.
until it was accidentally dismantled by a 22-year-old corporal who had absolutely nothing to lose.
And as we go through these sources together, we're going to see that this is so much more than a tragic aviation mishap.
Oh, absolutely.
It is a profound, surgical look at the anatomy of an institutional lie.
We are going to explore how massive bureaucracies manufacture silence.
It's really a story about the immense friction between human grief, the desperate need for a family to understand why a loved one died, and the crushing absolute weight of state secrets during a global conflict.
So let's jump forward in time to set our baseline. It's now June 1946.
Nearly 3 years after the plane disappeared into the snowstorm.
The war is officially over. And we meet the protagonist of our sources, Corporal Jean-Pierre Audet.
He's 22 years old.
And he's been assigned one of the most grim, psychologically taxing jobs you can imagine in the post-war military landscape.
He's part of a Royal Canadian Air Force recovery team.
Which means his day-to-day existence is incredibly macabre.
Yeah, during the war, a lot of planes went down in the remote Canadian wilderness.
Training flights, transports, patrols.
And they were simply swallowed by the forest.
Right, because no one had the resources to go looking for them while fighting a global war.
Exactly. But now that the war is over, when a missing plane is finally spotted by loggers or surveyors, Audet's team is sent in.
To catalog the debris, recover the remains, and bring some closure to the files.
So Audet is sitting in the back of a canvas-covered military truck, bouncing up a rutted logging road into the Laurentian Mountains.
He's eating a ham sandwich without any appetite.
This is his 6th recovery mission. He knows the grim routine by heart.
But to really understand why Audet reacts the way he does later on, we have to talk about what he's carrying with him before he even steps foot on the mountain.
Right, he's not just a blank slate in a uniform.
Far from it. Audet grew up as the son of a fisherman in Rivière-du-Loup,
a town right on the shores of the St. Lawrence River in Quebec.
And in 1942, his older brother, Remy, was killed.
And the context of Remy's death is absolutely critical here.
Explain that for us.
In 1942, German U-boats actually penetrated the Gulf of St. Lawrence and the river itself.
Right into Canadian waters.
Yes, it was the Battle of the St. Lawrence. They torpedoed merchant vessels and warships right off the coast. Remy was on one of those ships.
But the Canadian public didn't really know that was happening, did they?
No, and that's the crucial point. The military imposed brutal censorship on the media.
Because they were terrified of mass panic.
Exactly. If the public knew German submarines were right there in their home waters, it would be chaos.
So when Remy was killed, the military completely covered it up.
They told Audet's family nothing beyond the phrase "killed in service."
They refused to explain how, they refused to say where, and they never recovered the body.
Audet's family was just left with this agonizing, silent hole.
The sources mention that his mother stopped looking at the river entirely.
And his father kept fishing, but essentially stopped speaking.
You have to figure that leaves a serious mark on a young guy.
Absolutely.
He joins the military, puts on the exact same uniform of the institution that essentially erased his brother's death.
And now he's going into these forests to find other people's lost brothers.
He must have a baseline level of deep, instinctual mistrust for the brass.
It fundamentally rewires how he views authority. Audet knows firsthand that the military machine will gladly swallow a young man and stubbornly refuse to explain why.
He knows official narratives are constructed to protect the institution,
not to comfort the grieving. So when he arrives at this new crash site in the Laurentians, he is already subconsciously primed to look for the gaps.
He's looking for the things the military isn't saying.
And the site he arrives at is haunting.
The plane, the Liberator Harry we saw in Gander 3 years ago, was discovered by pure chance.
Another pilot was up looking for a completely different missing aircraft and happened to catch a glint of metal.
The wreckage is resting near the summit of Montagne Noire,
Black Mountain,
at an altitude of 875 meters. And the sources describe this incredibly intense, contradictory atmosphere.
Down in the valley, it's a sweltering July day.
Up on the mountain, under the dense canopy of evergreens, the air is cold.
There's a heavy, unnatural silence.
The recovery workers actually noted that local birds actively avoided flying over the crash zone.
And there's the smell.
The smell of oxidized metal, aviation fuel that is seeped deep into the soil.
And damp earth.
All mixing with this vibrant green moss that has slowly crept over the scorched aluminum over the last 3 years.
It's a scar on the earth that the forest is trying to reclaim.
It's the second day of the recovery operation. The team is combing the steep slope,
meticulously cataloging human remains, twisted engine parts, personal effects.
And Audet is described in the sources as a methodical guy. He's quiet.
He sketches things in his notebook to make sense of them.
He's the kind of person who notices the small things and stares at anomalies just a second too long.
So here's the moment that sets the entire deep dive in motion.
Imagine that Audet is pulling away a twisted, jagged piece of the plane's fuselage.
It's heavy. It's embedded in the dirt.
And underneath this metal, protected from the rain and the snow for 3 years, he finds an object that shatters the official reality of the flight.
It's a shoe.
But it's not a heavy leather military boot.
No.
It is a pristine black leather woman's high heel shoe.
Size 36.
The leather is of exceptional quality. It is a civilian luxury item sitting dead center in the middle of a classified military disaster.
The physical contradiction here is absolute.
Audet reaches into his pocket and pulls out the official flight manifest that his team was given.
It lists 24 men,
0 women, 0 civilians.
but he is holding a physical object that proves the paper in his pocket is a lie.
Wait, let's pause here. If you're a 22-year-old corporal and you find evidence that the manifest is wrong, isn't standard procedure to just bag it, tag it, and hand it to your commanding officer?
In a functioning, transparent system, yes, that is exactly what you do.
Why wouldn't he just say, hey, sir, I think there was a woman on this flight?
Because you have to remember Audet's psychological background. In that split second, holding that shoe, all of the unresolved trauma regarding his brother Remy floods back. His gut instinct screams at him that if he hands this civilian shoe over to a military officer, it will simply disappear into the exact same bureaucratic black hole that swallowed his brother.
He knows the system protects its own narratives.
So he makes a fateful decision. He wraps the shoe in a handkerchief and slides it deep into his pocket.
He hides evidence from his own team.
He does. And the timing is incredible because just a moment later, his commanding officer, Adjutant Roger Lacombe, walks up behind him through the brush.
And casually asks, find anything interesting, Corporal?
Audet turns around, looks him dead in the eye, and says, no, sir.
That no, sir feels like the true point of no return.
It is monumental. It is Audet's first active institutional lie.
He has just weaponized his silence against the military's history of silence.
He doesn't fully understand why he's doing it yet, or what the shoe really means, but he has drawn a line in the sand.
That night in his campus tent, under the flickering light of a hurricane lamp, he takes the shoe out.
He places it on his cot, traces its outline in his notebook,
and realizes he has crossed a threshold.
He is no longer just a recovery worker cataloging the dead. He is an investigator looking for a ghost.
And the mountain starts giving up more anomalies. On the 3rd day of the dig, they are pulling personal effects from the scattered wreckage.
They find pilot Jerry Nash's burned leather wallet.
Inside is a folded letter from his wife back in Fredericton.
She's writing about how their toddler has just started walking.
It's a devastating, grounding detail. Nash never got to read it. The letter was waiting for him at his destination.
When Audet reads this, the sources indicate he feels this massive surge of righteous anger.
24 men died on this mountain. Their family spent 3 agonizing years in limbo, and Ottawa clearly knew more about this flight than they ever admitted.
But we have to ask how Audet knows Ottawa was hiding something. What tipped him off that this wasn't just a tragic weather-related crash?
Well, it's the behavior of his commanding officer. Adjutant Lacombe casually mentions to the recovery team that he just got off the field phone with high command back in Ottawa.
And Ottawa wasn't asking for updates on the identification of the remains.
No, they weren't asking about Pilot Nash.
They specifically ordered Lacombe to conduct an exhaustive, grid-by-grid search of the wreckage for a leather briefcase or document satchel.
Lacombe tries to play it off to the men as just a routine classified document recovery.
But Audet notices Lacombe is choosing his words way too carefully.
Ottawa isn't deploying resources to look for bodies. They are looking for an object.
And that object connects to other strange findings. Audet is quietly sketching in his notebook.
Like what?
Mixed in with the twisted aluminum and military gear, they find fragments of high-end scientific measuring instruments.
We're not talking about standard aviation navigation tools that you'd find in a bomber cockpit.
Exactly. These are specialized civilian geological field tools.
Furthermore, Audet scrutinizes the manifest again. He notices something he missed before.
The stamps?
The manifest was stamped and countersigned by 2 different high-ranking commanding officers at the Gander base before takeoff.
Is that unusual for 1943?
Highly unusual. Gander in 1943 was the busiest airport in the world.
It was a massive, chaotic bottleneck for the Atlantic Ferry Organization, moving thousands of bombers to the European theater.
For a routine leave transport flight to require double verification from top brass.
It means someone very important wanted to ensure that plane left the runway without any local interference.
The pieces are forming a deeply disturbing picture.
Eventually, the mission on the mountain wraps up. They formally identify 3 of the victims through dental records, including Pilot Nash.
The other 21 are buried together in a collective grave.
Audet's field unit is sent back to headquarters in Ottawa to process the massive mountain of paperwork this recovery has generated.
Which brings us to Act 2 of our sources. Audet moves into a bleak rooming house on Rideau Street.
Imagine a squeaky metal bed, a mattress that sags in the middle.
A single window looking out at a brick alleyway.
And on a small desk, he lays out his secret evidence.
The size 36 high heel, his detailed notebook sketches, the manifest numbers, the notes about the scientific gear.
Ottawa in 1946 is an intimidating place, especially for a 22-year-old fisherman's son.
It's a city transitioning from a wartime footing to a permanent bureaucratic capital.
It is perfectly manicured, imposing, and obsessed with procedure.
It is a city of gray metal filing cabinets stretching as far as the eye can see.
Audit is completely overwhelmed by the scale of the machine he's looking at.
And interestingly, at this point, he still possesses a shred of naive optimism.
He actually still believes that the system might just be broken, not actively corrupt.
He thinks maybe the manifest error is just a clerical mistake, a typo.
Right, he tries to go through the front door first. He doesn't immediately become a rogue spy.
He fills out a formal standard issue memo, sending it up his regular chain of command.
He asks, very politely and professionally, if the manifest for the Liberator, Harry, could be cross-referenced with other passenger logs from Gander on that specific night.
It's a gentle, non-accusatory way of asking, hey, is it possible there was a 25th person on this plane?
3 days later, the memo comes back to his desk.
But it's not the piece of paper he sent.
This is a masterclass in how bureaucracies neutralize threats.
Someone didn't just reject his memo.
They intercepted it, threw it away, and rewrote his inquiry onto a new form using completely neutralized language.
They sanded down his specific, dangerous question into a generic administrative query.
And a superior officer scrawled across the bottom in red ink. Manifest verified. 24 passengers confirmed. Closed.
Closed. Just one word.
That single word is a brick wall.
This is how the administrative immune system responds to an anomaly.
It doesn't investigate the anomaly. It attacks the person pointing it out by shutting down the dialogue.
Audit realizes in this moment that the system isn't broken at all.
It's working exactly as it was designed to work.
Large institutions don't naturally correct themselves. Their primary reflex is self-preservation.
So if the front door is deadbolted, Audit decides to look for a window.
He uses his low-level clearance as a recovery clerk to visit the RCAF personnel archives.
He walks in, pretends he's just finalizing some mundane recovery reports for the Montaigne Noir file,
And asks to see the physical visitor logs for the Gander base from October 19th, 1943.
The clerk hands him this heavy, leather-bound ledger.
Audit takes it to a reading table and flips to October 19th.
He sees the long lists of military personnel, the pilots, the mechanics.
But right in the middle of the log, there is a physical anomaly.
There is a page missing.
And it hasn't just fallen out from age. It has been cleanly, surgically torn out with a straight edge.
And if you look at the page right before the tear, Audit sees a heading.
It's the start of a section logging civilian scientific visitors from the Ministry of Mines and the National Research Council's Geology Division.
The very page that would contain the names of those specific civilian visitors who were at Gander on the night of the crash has been removed.
And that's where everything changes for Audit.
You realize you aren't fighting a lazy clerk or general incompetence.
You are fighting an active, highly competent, premeditated cover-up.
Someone knew exactly what was on that page and removed it to protect the narrative.
So Audit realizes military channels are poisoned. He goes completely off the grid.
He leaves the military archives and heads to the Ottawa Public Library, far away from anyone in uniform.
He starts digging into public, civilian records from the fall of 1943.
Which is a daunting task because wartime censorship in the Canadian media was comprehensive.
Newspapers were forbidden from publishing details about troop movements, specific military crashes, or anything that could damage morale.
Audit scans the microfilms and finds only one tiny, vague blurb in a French-language paper called Le Droit from October 25, 1943.
Simply mentioning a missing aircraft in the eastern sector.
No names, no flight numbers, no details.
But Audit isn't looking for the plane anymore. He's looking for the ghost of the shoe.
He brilliantly shifts his focus to the civilian obituary sections of November 1943.
Remember, the plane crashed in late October.
After days of scrolling through microfilm, his eyes catch on a name.
He finds an obituary for a woman named Madeleine Arsenal.
She is listed as a civilian employee of the federal government.
The obituary states she died tragically in a car crash in Ottawa on November 15, 1943.
That is exactly 3 weeks after the Liberator Harry went down.
It notes she was buried in the Notre Dame Cemetery.
A female federal employee dying violently right after a highly classified secret flight crashes.
It's a massive, glaring coincidence.
Audit thinks the same thing. He takes a city tram out to the Notre Dame Cemetery.
He walks the rows until he finds the grave. It's a gray granite headstone, beautifully carved.
The name Madeline Arsenault is etched into the stone.
But Audit is a guy who looks at anomalies. He stares at the stone and notices it has absolutely no patina.
It doesn't have the weathering, the moss, or the subtle erosion that you would expect from a stone sitting in the harsh Ottawa winters for 3 years.
It looks like it was rushed out of a factory a week ago and just dropped onto the grass.
So Audit does something incredibly resourceful.
He bypasses the federal paperwork and goes straight to the working class reality of the situation.
He finds the local gravedigger.
He asks to see the cemetery's actual physical burial registry.
The gravedigger, who has no reason to hide anything, shows him the logbook.
And there it is. The headstone was indeed ordered and paid for.
But the actual column for the burial, the date when a wooden box actually goes into the dirt, says postponed awaiting instructions.
The gravedigger tells Audit that those instructions never came.
The stone was paid for, the paperwork cleared the office, so the cemetery put the stone up.
But nobody ever arrived.
The grave is completely empty. There is nobody beneath that stone.
Audit digs deeper into the cemetery's financial registry. He wants to know who paid for this fake grave.
It wasn't a grieving mother or a husband.
The invoice was paid by an organization called the Federal Personnel Family Assistance Fund,
which is a classic bureaucratic slush fund. It's a way to move government money without triggering a major audit.
Exactly. And the date on the invoice for the headstone is November 18.
They ordered this headstone in a wild, frantic rush just days after they announced her fake death in the newspaper.
This specific detail provides a phenomenal insight into the fatal flaw of massive government cover-ups.
Intelligence agencies and military high commands are incredibly proficient at controlling their own internal files.
They can tear a page out of a Gander military logbook with absolute precision, and no one will ever know.
But they cannot flawlessly control decentralized civilian systems.
They can order a headstone and plant a fake obituary, but they forget that a local working-class gravedigger keeps his own meticulous logbook of when a body actually arrives.
They assume the civilian world will just bend to their paperwork.
They left a gap between the military illusion and the civilian reality, and Audette slipped right into that gap.
So Audette now has a name. Madeline Arsenault is the woman on the plane.
The owner of the size 36 shoe.
Now he needs to know who she was and why she was on that flight.
He heads to the headquarters of the National Research Council, the NRC, or CNR, as it's often abbreviated in the French records.
Now, for you listening, why is a federal scientific research body acting like an intelligence agency?
That's a great question.
During World War II, the National Research Council wasn't just studying agriculture or weather. They were essentially Canada's scientific intelligence wing.
They were deeply involved in highly classified wartime research.
Radar development, chemical warfare defense, and most importantly, atomic energy research at the Montreal Laboratory.
So the CNR building on Sussex Drive was functionally a military installation operating under a civilian facade.
Got it. So Audit walks into this building.
The sources paint a picture of a sterile, imposing environment that smells like old paper, floor wax, and cold coffee.
The linoleum floors are gleaming under flickering fluorescent lights.
Audit walks up to the central archives desk, projects as much confidence as he can, pretends he's doing a routine RCAF audit,
and asks for the employment file of a deceased civilian named Madeline Arsenault.
He's met by the head archivist, a man named Mr. Boulot.
Goulou is described as the ultimate bureaucratic gatekeeper.
He is a small man with thick glasses who seems to derive deep personal satisfaction from applying the rules.
Bewley checks his index cards, comes back to the counter, and states that the file is marked Restricted Access Ministerial Authorization Required.
Audit tries to play dumb. He leans on the counter and says, "Why would a low-level civilian who died in a simple car crash need a federal cabinet minister's signature just to look at her personnel file?"
Bewley just offers this cold, thin smile and says, "I don't make the procedures cordial, I merely apply them."
But as Bewley turns around to put the card away, Audit catches a 2-second glimpse of Madeline's index card resting on the desk.
He sees a small black and white ID photo.
A 28-year-old woman, narrow face, dark hair pinned up.
And right next to her name, there's a departmental employment code. Div Geo, the Geology Division.
Audit knows he's hit a wall with Bewley, so he turns to leave the archives.
But as he's walking down the echoing hallway, a woman in her 50s steps out of a side office and quietly stops him.
This is Yvonne Tremblay. She's a receptionist.
She's the kind of person who is completely invisible to the high-ranking scientists and military men.
But because of that invisibility, She sees and hears absolutely everything that happens in that building.
She looks at Audette, checks to make sure the hallway is clear, and whispers a very specific loaded question.
Are you looking for the mountain or the car?
I mean, that is a jaw-dropping moment. She knows.
Audette realizes instantly that Yvonne knows the car crash was a fabricated lie.
He whispers back, "The mountain."
Yvonne doesn't blink. She says, "Meet me tomorrow at 11 a.m. Not here, at the cafe across the street."
And she turns and walks away like nothing happened.
This cafe meeting is a massive turning point in the sources.
When they meet, Yvonne is terrified. She's jittery. She orders a tea she never drinks.
She tells Audette the truth about her colleague. Madeline Arsenal wasn't a field geologist. She was a master cartographer.
Her specific job was to take highly complex, secret field data brought back from the wilderness and translate it into incredibly detailed topographical maps.
Yvonne says that in October 1943, Madeline told her she was leaving for a brief weekend work trip.
She never came back to the office.
A few weeks later, the staff read about the tragic car crash in the newspaper.
And Yvonne tells Audette that the car crash was a ridiculously sloppy lie.
Why? Because Madeline didn't even know how to drive.
She didn't own a car. She took the city tram to work every single day.
But Yvonne didn't dare say a word to her superiors.
Because 2 days after the obituary was published, a man in a crisp suit, not a scientist but an intelligence officer, showed up at the CNR.
He didn't just pack up her personal items.
He walked straight to Madeline's locked filing cabinet, produced a key, unlocked it, and removed one specific item.
A brown leather briefcase.
He took it and walked out without speaking to anyone.
So now all the disparate threads Audette has been pulling are snapping together tightly.
Think about the sequence. The military liaison on Montagne Noire was ordered to search for a leather briefcase.
The intelligence officer in the crisp suit took a leather briefcase from the CNR.
The civilian on the runway at Gander was clutching a leather briefcase.
Audette realizes his fatal flaw up to this point. He has been entirely focused on the ghost of the woman.
He wanted to give her a name, a real grave, to honor his brother's memory.
But the massive government machine doesn't care about the woman. She was expendable.
The machine cares entirely about the contents of the briefcase.
That is a chilling realization. It shifts his entire strategy. We move into Act 4.
Audette goes back to the CNR the next day.
He creates a totally fake military requisition form, basically bluffing his way into the actual applied geology department under the guise of an equipment audit.
The department head is this nervous guy, sweating through his shirt, who gives him non-answers.
But while Audette is standing in his office pretending to check serial numbers on microscopes, he looks at the wall.
There is a massive map of Canada, and it is covered in red pins.
But these pins aren't randomly distributed across the country.
They are heavily concentrated in northern Ontario and specifically in the wild, unmapped territory of Labrador.
And Audette, with his eye for anomalies, notices something else. Some of the pins have been recently removed.
If you look closely at the paper over the Labrador region, you can see tiny clustered pinholes left behind.
The map is a visual representation of what they were searching for.
And on his way out of the department, Audette stops at a social bulletin board in the hallway.
You know, the kind with photos from summer picnics and office Christmas parties.
He spots a group photo dated summer of 1943.
Right in the middle is Madeline. He recognizes her narrow face from the index card.
And standing right next to her is a civilian man, and he's holding the exact same brown leather briefcase Yvonne described.
Audette burns this image into his memory. He knows he can't steal the photo without raising alarms.
So he rushes back to his rooming house and meticulously sketches the man and the briefcase in his notebook.
Armed with a specific geographic location, Labrador Audette heads back to the public library.
He starts pulling old newspapers again, looking for anything related to the CNR and Labrador in 1943.
He finds a piece in the Ottawa Citizen from December 1943.
It's an article that was clearly butchered by government censors.
There are literal black blocks of ink printed over several paragraphs.
But the censor, being human, missed one crucial sentence in the continuation on page 4.
It mentions an inventory of strategic mineral resources in the Northeast and references a highly classified field report submitted to the War Resources Committee.
The report is identified by a specific alphanumeric code, CNR 43M771.
CNR 43M771. That alphanumeric string is the holy grail for Audette.
It is the connective tissue.
That code connects the briefcase, the cartographer, the geology department, the removed pins on the map, and the doomed military flight.
Audit still doesn't know exactly what strategic mineral they found in Labrador.
But he knows beyond a shadow of a doubt that a detailed map of it was inside that briefcase.
But just as Audit finds the key, the door violently slams shut in his face.
He gets a summons. And it's not a standard memo from his regular commanding officer at the recovery unit.
It's a priority telegram stamped by the RCAF High Command ordering him to report immediately to the Connaught Building.
Specifically to the office of Colonel Harwood Price.
And this is the moment where the stakes escalate from annoying bureaucratic roadblocks to actual physical danger.
Harwood Price is not an administrative clerk.
He is serious, high-level military intelligence. He operates in the dark.
Audit walks into Price's office. The sources describe it as this imposing wood-paneled room designed to make you feel small.
But there's this one detail that is so incredibly unnerving.
There are 3 clocks on the wall behind Price's desk, and none of them are synchronized.
They're all ticking at slightly different rhythms.
It's a classic psychological pressure tactic.
It keeps the person sitting across the desk entirely off balance. It fractures your sense of time and reality during an interrogation.
It's terrifying. Price is a man in his 50s, perfectly tailored uniform, sitting with his hands resting flat on his desk.
He offers Audit coffee. Audit refuses.
And Price doesn't yell. He doesn't slam his fist on the desk or play the angry interrogator.
He speaks with this chilling, polite, almost clinical observation.
He says, "It appears you have developed an interest in matters that fall far outside your purview, Corporal."
He tells Audit that a young man with a whole life ahead of him, a man whose mother has already suffered enough loss, should be careful.
He leans in slightly and says, "Your curiosity is dangerous, Corporal. For you. I am telling you this for your own benefit. The Army has ways of protecting its members from their own sudden impulses."
Protecting you from yourself. It's a beautifully veiled threat.
He's saying, back off or you will disappear and we will tell your mother it was an accident to spare her feelings.
But Price, despite his experience, makes one microscopic mistake during this meeting.
When the conversation briefly touches on the Montaigne Noir recovery operation, Price's eyes involuntarily dart, just for a fraction of a second, to the bottom right drawer of his desk.
Audit, who is hyper-observant, catches it.
It's a massive tell. Price has something physical in that drawer related to the Liberator Harry.
But more importantly, Audit realizes Price is executing orders. He isn't the top of the pyramid.
If a high-ranking colonel is this nervous about a corporal asking questions, the secret must be monstrous.
Audit leaves the Connaught Building, and you have to imagine his heart is absolutely pounding out of his chest.
He rushes back to his rooming house on Rideau Street.
He opens his door and immediately freezes in the doorway.
The room hasn't been trashed. It hasn't been tossed by a burglar. It's much worse.
It has been perfectly surgically searched.
Which is the undisputed hallmark of professional intelligence operatives.
Exactly. The handkerchief he used to wrap the shoe, which was hidden in his bottom drawer, has been folded slightly differently.
His notebook, which he kept wedged under the soft mattress, is shifted by maybe 1/4 of an inch.
Someone came into his room while he was with Price, read every single one of his notes.
Likely photographed his sketches of the pin map and the CNR photo, and put everything back almost perfectly.
But here's the most terrifying part of the intrusion. They didn't take the shoe?
The shoe is still there.
We have to unpack the psychological warfare of that decision. Why leave the physical evidence of the crime?
By leaving the shoe, the intelligence team is sending Audit a deafening message.
We don't care about your physical evidence. We already know what happened on that mountain. We only tossed your room to see exactly how much you know.
They are boxing him in. They are letting him know there is nowhere he can hide.
Audit realizes he is rapidly running out of time.
They're going to silence him permanently. It's just a matter of when and how.
He decides to make one final desperate dive into the military operational archives before his security clearance is inevitably revoked.
He pulls the actual search and rescue flight logs from October 1943, the week the Liberator Harry went missing.
He spends hours reading through 728 aerial sorties, over 2,000 hours of flight time logged by search planes looking for the wreckage.
And buried deep in the back of a logbook, he finds a detail that makes his blood run completely cold.
This is the phantom signal, and it is arguably the darkest revelation in the entire stack of sources.
On October 25, 1943, that is 6 full days after the Liberator Harry crashed into Montaigne Noir, an RCAF Anson search plane was flying over the Matawan River.
About 40 kilometers north of the actual crash zone.
The pilot of that search plane logged that he picked up a faint, manual SOS signal from a portable survival radio on the ground.
The military report officially dismissed it as atmospheric interference and closed the file.
We need to explain why atmospheric interference is a blatant lie.
During World War II, bomber crews carried emergency survival radios, commonly known as the Gibson Girl, because of its hourglass shape.
To transmit an SOS on these radios, you couldn't just flip a switch. It didn't have a battery.
You had to hold it between your knees and physically turn a hand crank at a very specific continuous speed to generate the power for the distress signal.
It was physically exhausting work. You absolutely do not get manual rhythmic Morse code from atmospheric static.
Which means someone survived the crash.
Someone was alive in the freezing cold of the Laurentian Mountains, likely suffering from massive injuries, frantically cranking that radio for at least 6 days, waiting for a rescue that never came.
But it gets even darker. While digging in the archives, Audit cross-references the recovery dates and finds a material transfer slip dated June 25, 1946.
That date is critical. That is 2 days before Audit's official recovery team even arrived at the crash site.
The slip authorizes the transfer of one leather briefcase, contents uninventoried, directly to the office of Colonel Harwood Price.
Let's lay out the staggering implications of that timeline.
In 1943, there was a survivor cranking a radio. The military picked up the signal, but they didn't mount a rescue.
In 1946, a Black Ops intelligence team was sent to the mountain before the official military recovery team.
They didn't go to rescue the survivor in 43, and they didn't go to respectfully recover the dead bodies in 46.
They went to secure the briefcase.
The 24 military men on that plane, and whatever civilians survived the impact, were considered acceptable collateral damage.
The priority from the moment the plane went down was always the map.
So what on earth was on that map? We are now in Act 5, The Shadow of the Bomb.
Audette is sitting in his room, totally paralyzed by the sheer horrific scale of what he's uncovered.
Someone slips a cryptic message under his door. It's from Mr. Booley, the strict, rule-following archivist from the CNR.
Bewley wants to meet in a public park, out in the open.
Audette goes. He finds Bewley sitting on a park bench, looking physically sick, sweating despite the breeze.
Bewley explains that after Audette's visit to the archives, he got suspicious. His curiosity got the better of him.
He used his senior clearance to bypass the restriction and actually open Madeline Arsenal's file.
Bewley tells Audette that he isn't a hero, but he has a memory, and what he saw in that file terrified him to his core.
The file didn't just have a standard wartime restriction. It carried a classification code that Bewley had never seen in his entire career in government. Dominion Nuclear Security.
Furthermore, Bewley looked up the alphanumeric code Audette had asked about, CNR 43-771.
The index linked that specific geological report to a geographic location, Martin Bay, Labrador.
And just like that, Bewley stands up, pulls his coat tight, and walks away.
Leaving Audette with those two massive pieces of the puzzle. Nuclear security, Martin Bay, Labrador.
We have to provide some crucial historical context here, because this is the nuclear core of the story.
It is the fall of 1943. The United States is deep into the Manhattan Project, locked in a desperate, top-secret race against Nazi Germany to build the atomic bomb.
But the single most critical bottleneck for the Manhattan Project wasn't scientists or math, it was uranium.
They needed massive, secure, reliable supplies of uranium ore to refine into fissile material.
Canada was a vital covert partner in this.
While the U.S. built the infrastructure for the bomb, Canada scoured its vast, unmapped northern territories for uranium deposits.
They had the El Dorado mine at Great Bear Lake, but they needed more.
So the strategic rare minerals mentioned in that heavily censored newspaper article.
With uranium.
Madeline Arsenault wasn't just drawing topographical maps of pine trees and rivers. She was mapping a massive, newly discovered uranium deposit in Martin Bay, Labrador.
The civilian with the briefcase standing next to her on the runway was carrying the raw geological surveys and the exact coordinates of the fuel needed to build the most destructive weapon in human history.
That is why they were smuggled onto a midnight military flight to Ottawa.
That is why the government ruthlessly fabricated a car crash to erase her existence.
And that is why a high-ranking intelligence colonel is threatening a 22-year-old corporal over a misplaced high-heel shoe.
Audette hasn't just uncovered a military snafu, he has stumbled headfirst into the absolute highest-stakes secret of the 20th century.
And the machine is finally moving to crush him.
The next morning, Audette leaves his rooming house and notices a man in a gray hat standing across the street.
When Audette walks, the man walks. When Audit stops to look in a window, the man stops.
It's not subtle. It's a blatant professional tale. It's physical intimidation.
Audit goes to the CNR building to try and find Yvonne Tremblay, his only ally.
But her desk is completely empty.
Another receptionist tells him Yvonne was quietly reassigned yesterday afternoon. No one knows where she went.
She just vanished into the bureaucracy.
The isolation is systematic and incredibly fast. They are cutting all his ties. They are showing him how easily a person can be disappeared.
And then the hammer falls. Audit gets back to his desk at the recovery unit and finds a transfer order sitting on his typewriter.
Effective in exactly 48 hours, Corporal Audit is being permanently reassigned to a remote logistics base in Trenton, Ontario.
It is an institutional exile.
They are moving him out of Ottawa, away from the archives, away from the NRC, away from the public library, into a meaningless, low-level job where his mail will be read and his movements watched forever.
He has 48 hours left, so Audit enacts a brilliant, desperate contingency plan.
He knows he is completely outmatched. He can't fight the combined weight of the Canadian and American nuclear security apparatus.
But he can ensure the truth survives his exile.
He spends the entire night meticulously copying his notebook.
He makes 3 complete sets of his findings. The sketches of the photo, the dates of the search planes, the alphanumeric codes, the gravedigger's log.
He hides one coded copy in a letter to his mother, disguised as a rambling story about a fishing trip.
But the master copy, the complete uncensored narrative of the cover-up, he seals in a thick manila envelope.
He takes a weekend pass, his very last one, and boards a night train heading east to his hometown of Rivière-du-Loup.
He bypasses his own family home and goes straight to see his father's oldest friend, Arthur, who is a hardened veteran of the First World War.
Arthur knows the cost of war and the lies of governments. He doesn't ask Audit for the details.
He takes the thick envelope, places it inside a heavy metal lockbox, and physically pries up the floorboards of his bedroom.
He hides the box on the floor.
Audit gives Arthur one simple, chilling instruction. If I disappear, or if I die in a sudden accident, you give this to the press.
Arthur looks at the young corporal and says something that really anchors the philosophical weight of this story.
What does he say?
He says, "Institutions lie to survive, like an animal biting off its own paw when it's caught in a trap. Your job isn't to make them tell the truth right now. Your job is to make sure the truth outlives their lie."
It's a profoundly grounding moment for Audit. He isn't going to win the war today, but he has successfully secured the history.
Audit takes the train back to Ottawa, packs his military duffel bag, and heads to the central train station to accept his exile to Trenton.
He boards the train. The passenger car is mostly empty.
He sits by the window, watching the gray autumn landscape of Ontario start to roll by.
And then a man walks down the aisle and sits in the empty seat directly across from him.
It's not the thug in the gray hat who is tailing him.
It's an older gentleman, very sophisticated, wearing a perfectly tailored civilian suit. He looks like a kindly father or a wealthy corporate lawyer.
This is the climax of the psychological war. The man introduces himself simply as an advisor to the Ministry of Defense.
He doesn't speak to Audit with anger or aggression. He speaks with this chilling, weary patience.
The patience of a man who controls everything.
The advisor looks at Audit and says, "You're a very intelligent young man, Corporal, but you have stumbled into a room where you do not belong. The people in that room are not evil. They are making decisions to protect this country and the free world that you will never have to make."
He looks down at Audit's duffel bag. He says, "I want the shoe. And I want to know with absolute certainty that there are no notes."
And then the advisor lays out the deal. It is an absolute masterpiece of institutional coercion.
He tells Audit, "Hand over the shoe, forget the alphanumeric codes, forget Martin Bay, and your transfer to Trenton is canceled immediately. You stay in Ottawa, you get a commendation and a promotion, your file is wiped completely clean."
And then, just to ensure compliance, the advisor drops the ultimate devastating leverage.
He says, "I understand your mother recently filed for a military widow's pension regarding your late brother Remy. It would be a terrible shame if that paperwork got lost in the system. It can be easily expedited, or it could be indefinitely delayed, depending entirely on the choices you make today."
I mean, what do you even do in that situation? It is so sickeningly effective.
They aren't threatening to put a bullet in his head. They're threatening to financially starve his grieving mother.
Audit is vibrating with rage. He looks the advisor dead in the eye and asks one final question about the woman who started it all. Is Madeleine Arsenal alive or dead?
The advisor doesn't blink. He just looks at him and says, "What she carried is something the world isn't ready to know. And your question has no answer that will help you, Corporal.
I have to pause here. Think about the sheer weight crushing down on Audit. He is 22 years old.
He has a woman's high heel shoe in his canvas bag.
Sitting across from him is the whispering, immaculately dressed voice of a global nuclear superpower.
Do you burn your own life down and destroy your mother's financial survival to avenge a woman you've never met? Or do you take the deal?
It's the impossible choice. It's the moment where morality and survival collide. But Audit finds a third way. This brings us to Act 6.
Audit realizes that fighting a frontal public assault against this machine is suicide.
He has already secured the truth under Arthur's floorboards in Rivière-du-Loup.
The physical shoe in his bag is just an object. The truth is safe.
So the train pulls into a midway station. Audit grabs his heavy duffel bag, stands up without saying a word to the advisor, and walks off the train.
He crosses the platform and takes a return train straight back to Ottawa.
He marches right back into the Connaught building, past the bewildered guards, and straight into Colonel Harwood Price's office.
The 3 clocks are still ticking on the wall.
Price looks up from his paperwork. Audit unzips his bag, reaches in, takes out the black leather high heel, and places it dead center on Price's pristine desk.
Audit looks at the colonel and says, "The file is closed."
Price looks at the shoe. For just a second, the sources say Price looks incredibly tired, like a man carrying a weight he can never put down.
He opens his bottom right drawer, sweeps the shoe into it, and locks it.
Price looks up and says, "You made the right choice, Corporal. Your transfer to Trenton remains in effect, but your file is clean. Your mother's pension will be approved tomorrow morning."
And then Price says something incredibly revealing. A moment of almost terrifying honesty from a spy.
He says, "The file is closed. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It means it's closed."
Audit achieves a profound moral victory here. He surrendered the physical evidence, yes,
He took the punishment of the exile to Trenton to protect his mother.
but he did not surrender his mind, and he did not surrender the history. He knows that Price knows that he knows. The lie is a shared secret now.
It's a surrender of the ego, which is a massive character arc for a 22-year-old who started this journey driven by raw, angry grief.
He accepts that justice isn't always immediate. Sometimes, merely preserving the truth in a lockbox in a small coastal town is the greatest act of defiance possible against an empire.
Audit walks out of the Connaught building. He has one day left in Ottawa before he leaves for the isolation of Trenton forever.
He's walking down Sussex Drive, feeling hollowed out but resolute.
He passes the National Research Council building one last time, and walking toward him on the crowded sidewalk, blending in perfectly with the civilians, is Yvonne Tremblay.
The receptionist, who supposedly vanished.
The final twist of the knife.
She is walking briskly, clutching her purse, looking straight ahead.
She doesn't stop. She doesn't even turn her head as she approaches him.
But as she passes shoulder to shoulder with Audit in the crowd, she whispers one final bombshell into the cold air.
She says, her name was Madeline, and she wasn't traveling alone.
She keeps walking and vanishes into the sea of gray coats.
Let's do the devastating math on that final revelation.
The official flight manifest of the Liberator Harry had 24 military men.
The shoe Adat found belonged to Madeline, making her the 25th passenger on that plane.
But Yvonne just confirmed she wasn't traveling alone. That means there was a 26th passenger.
The civilian man with the briefcase from the photograph.
Madeline, the cartographer, and her colleague, the geologist who surveyed the uranium.
2 civilians carrying the atomic secrets of the Labrador deposits, smuggled onto a doomed midnight flight.
The government didn't just cover up one civilian death on that mountain, they covered up 2.
And we are left with a terrifying post-credits scene in the historical record drawn directly from the declassified surveillance logs of the era.
A few weeks after Audit leaves for Trenton, in a dark, unnamed office in Ottawa, 3 men are sitting around a table.
One of them is smoking. On the table is Audit's personnel file and a canvas bag containing the black leather shoe.
The smoker says, "The corporal is in Trenton. The shoe is recovered. The file is closed."
But the man sitting in the shadows by the window says, "What about his notes? Price thinks he made copies."
The smoker laughs dismissively and says, "He's a low-level corporal. He has no one to give them to."
And the man in the shadows replies, "Find them anyway."
The game isn't over. It was just driven underground.
We've spent this entire deep dive tracing the steps of a young man trying to find a shred of meaning in his brother's watery grave.
And by pulling on a single thread, a misplaced high heel on a mossy mountain, he unraveled the atomic secrets of a nation.
He faced down the architects of the nuclear age with nothing but a notebook and sheer, unrelenting stubbornness.
And this brings us to a critical realization for us today, reading these sources decades later.
We live in an era of absolute information overload.
We are drowning in data, press releases, public relations, and official narratives from massive organizations.
But Audit's story proves that the most important, world-changing information isn't found in what institutions broadcast.
It is found in their silences.
The cleanly torn pages in a visitor log, the graves that have fresh headstones but no bodies.
The questions that are answered a little too perfectly or the inquiries that are shut down a little too quickly.
The truth is often found in the negative space.
Exactly.
So as you go about your week, look around at the massive institutions that govern your own life.
The corporations, the algorithms, the governments.
When they tell you that a file is closed or that a decision is final, what exactly are they trying to bury? Keep asking questions. Keep looking for the anomalies. And stay curious.